Hello, hello, hello.
Why do you do this to me?
Welcome to Soul Code. I'm Andra Annette, and this is Lorilet Monegro. And I always just start recording and I didn't tell her I was going. So we were having a conversation about other things, and what we were talking about is how it's been a really long week because we are involved in so many things, and you don't realize. And then Friday comes, and you're like, ah, breath, right? So, so the true story, I was telling her that I had to take a nap to do the show tonight, that I was just so tired that I wasn't going to make it to the show if I just didn't close my eyes and just hone in on what was going on in my body for a little while. So,
Take a moment for your own health.
yeah, yes, exactly. So, I am that person that really lives what I tell other people. So, that self-care and all that stuff. And when I start getting away from that, I see that show up in the other areas of my life. So that's why I'm always able to rein it back in, because I always know when I'm off my mark for something, when I need that extra 10 minutes. So for me, I was always the first thing that I took care of first thing in the morning. I had my pajama pants on. Shh. So I was always the first thing that I took care of early in the morning. And then I started getting involved in all these things, and I saw that I was doing those things first. And it always worked best for me if I took care of me the first 2 hours I was up. Like I made that plan, I worked that plan, I did what I had to do. So and you feel kind of off your mark in other areas, like you're rushing to things sometimes when you don't do your self-care first. Like it feels like you're missing a little piece of that self-care. So I quickly reined that back in when I saw that I was losing minutes in the morning that were critical for me making, what I want to eat. I like to cook myself like a healthy breakfast. Like this morning, I made a nice Buddha bowl, with wild rice and eggs and peppers and onions and all this good stuff that I love, right? So those few minutes that I'm giving away to somebody else, I wasn't doing that for myself, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Touched upon something right there. It's
Yeah. So
the
I said,
sense of boundaries, like, hey, wait a minute, like what's
yeah,
going on here? That
yeah.
was
So
good.
sometimes you don't realize, and that's what I try to encourage other people to do that self-care first, because a lot of times when people are struggling with weight loss or ill health of any kind, it's usually because we get so busy and we start taking on things from other people, and pretty soon our day is monopolized, and we lose sight of that most important and critical piece, and then, we're on weight loss programs and all this other stuff, and like, hey, what happened to me? Right.
Mhm.
So when I see myself even getting a little bit off my mark, where I feel like I didn't have time to do something, I always say to myself, well, what did I do this morning that I really didn't need to do that replaced what I needed, right? And then I wheel myself back in. Because
And even
it
that,
happens.
even that you just said, requires a person to develop that ability to reflect, right? And immediately kind of observe their own behavior and say, wait a minute, I have to reconsider this. What am I doing? Right? Because you see, if you don't do that, that's how you end up in a really bad place. And I love everything you're sharing right now because it's like, wait a minute, one is becoming aware, two is really your setting your boundaries, three, claiming back your time with things that are like draining you and not letting you really function optimally to the things that you really desire most. And four, getting rid of stuff that just drains your energy, that doesn't let you succeed at your goals. So I think that you're saying so many things, and I don't know if you're realizing how many, and it's like one after the other, and I love it. And hopefully people start realizing, yeah, heck yeah, I have to like double check myself and reclaim my time.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I do a lot of this work with my clients, and sometimes like they all get homework. Sometimes they think I'm crazy, but like I'll ask them these little questions or these prompts, and it always leads to where they're at and where they're struggling. So, I mean, you yourself know you work in education and teaching. You know, you work with speech, you know that there's a lot of indicators with human behavior, right? And that
Yes.
all of us are human and we all have those behaviors. We just react different in different
Mhm,
situations. So
mhm,
they are key things. And sometimes people that what I find the most in health is that people don't honor their time and that they have difficulty with boundaries and they don't know how to say no or even maybe like can you help me with this maybe let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Even saying maybe will deter someone from waiting because who's ever asking you they want it done right away, right? So they're going to either do it
mhm,
themselves or they're going to look for someone else to help them. And
mhm.
that maybe until you learn how to say no is like that bridge from
Mhm,
being that yes person all the time to that no, I absolutely can't, right? Because
mhm.
I mean, I've had to tell people a few times, what part of no don't you understand? I said
Right,
no. So,
right.
so some people, are have difficulties with that. So I'll give them assignments like, this week I want you to practice saying no wherever you can and I
Right.
want you to say it with conviction and walk away, right?
Right, right.
No. And then and I said it could be something very silly where if you go in for a cup of coffee and the guy says sugar and milk, I want you to probably say, no, thank you. Just to say no. But you get used to it and it gets easier.
Mhm,
It's no secret. I talk about it very openly online. I was in health and I got to that place of unwellness. And when I looked at what had changed, because you can really reverse engineer anything that's happening in your life, I saw that I became that yes person and that I
mhm,
had lost myself in that, and
mhm.
waking up one day and not knowing what you enjoy anymore, you know, was eye-opening to say the least,
Of
right?
course, it's like getting lost and not knowing, how you end up in a place. Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to encourage people to do those reflections like you had mentioned because they're critical. They're pivot points,
Mhm, mhm,
I asked a question today about, do you stop doing things that you like to do because you're afraid of failing? And a lot of people said yes, but there's only a few people that will raise their hand and say, yes, that's me. And someone did. And I think that when we could look at failure as that pivot to success, that learning, that it's something we should celebrate instead of look badly at, that we'll be more apt to step outside of those comfort zones and put ourselves out there. Some people are afraid to meet new people, afraid of looking silly and afraid of looking stupid. I don't get that, I mean, I look ridiculous several times a week and I just don't care, right? Because I've gotten so comfortable with just being who I am,
right.
and that took a long time. That didn't happen overnight. But I got so comfortable with that I'm not really interested in other people's opinions of me you know
Right.
now when I didn't fully love myself or like myself, I was very honed in on those people who didn't like me, like I could be at a party and I would always find the one person that didn't like me and I'd be like, how come you don't like me? I don't get it. Don't you know I'm wonderful? So but
They were
but
like,
when you
"What?"
stop looking for that outside approval and you kind of just start working on those insides, things get easier. Things More of the people that are like you do show up because now they see you in them. They see that reflection, right?
Mhm.
I know it sounds silly, but people
Mm,
do.
mm, no,
So what are
no,
your
not at
thoughts?
all. Well, I mean, I think that, people find different reasons to connect to someone's messaging. And, it's funny because sometimes we can tell someone the same thing 500,000 times. and they don't get it. And then there's that one person, that one voice, that one day, that moment when all of a sudden the same message, maybe with a different tone, just comes across and hits the mark, you know? So I think that um we have to kind of find the people that really hear our voices, right? And they will know how to identify with that and be like, you know what? I this person seems sincere, genuine to me, right? Like, because guess what? We're being ourselves, but people will see us through their lens. So that's where the issue is. This is why it's so important to continue forward, regardless of whatever people want to think or whatever opinions, because all of those opinions are informed by that person's viewpoint and experience, past knowledge and understanding and interpretation of everything around them. So I personally like to understand as much as I can, but I tell you, I think I'm very I'm very clear on my thought process, right? Because I actually sit with things for a while. And so when I kind of go, okay, this is my viewpoint, this is my core value on this. Unless you come with something really compelling, that didn't arrive on a whim. I got to a core belief and understanding through a process. And so I can be a little bit maybe not as flexible when I have established a way. But I could also then be willing, right, to understand a viewpoint because I realize, oh, they're coming from that vantage point. Oh, they're coming with their baggage, their lived experience, their sense of failure or limitation informs their ability to see what my bandwidth should be on their perception of me. So I think we got to experience people. Um, we got to give ourselves that chance to be able to really know what's what. Um, because I've seen a whole bunch of phonies out there that
Yeah,
somehow seem,
I think that I think that a lot of the generation, and this is just my belief, and I've been putting this in a lot of articles I'm doing for Brains Magazine, different views of this. It's going to show up in one of the books I'm doing, and um, because all of my books have a different part of me, a different story of me ingrained in it, right? So, um, and I think that the generation that we're bringing up
Mhm.
is taught that they don't have what they need inside of them. I think that's been consistent for the last 50 years
Mhm.
or maybe 60 years that everybody they need to look outside of themselves to achieve things that they want to. That they themselves are not enough as they are. So
Mhm.
and my beliefs about that are really strong because I've seen it in other things, other situations that I've been in my life. When you have a whole room thinking they're nobody understands them, you don't know, you haven't lived my life, and their feelings are all about unmet needs, human needs and
Mhm.
validation and things like that, then you have to start to ask yourself as a human being, because this is the human condition, this is what we're a part of. You have to ask yourself as a human being, not and you do have to be open to look outside of your own thoughts to, if I want people to accept me as who I am, then I need to be open to who they are. And
Mhm.
that means that I only clean up my side of the street and I don't worry about what they're doing on their street, that I either take it or leave it. So if, you know, someone loves dancing the Irish jig and I'm more of the salsa person, okay, well you can do your dance and I'll dance mine over here, or you know what I mean? Um, but I
Mhm.
think as a culture we're not very accepting, and I think this has come up many times in a lot of our shows, that there's not enough acceptance for the
Well,
cultures of people that we have, and live and let live is the attitude that I
Yeah.
had to adapt. That's part of my story. That's part of um, you know, who I
I,
am today.
yeah, I mean, I just think that we need to have like a more additive approach. I don't think that, for example, what I find interesting is when people want to come in and disrupt what exists and be like, oh no, you can't have that unless you give this and that. And it's like, but why? Why can't we just create your path for you, for what you need, for your current belief, for your current point of view? For example, it would be unfair to demand that someone have a viewpoint that is just not their own, is not their core value, is not their belief, whether right or wrong, morally or not. All of that is relative to your core, to your belief system, to what you believe your truth is. But I find that somehow we don't do that. Somehow we want to take over other people's spaces, we want to take over other people's things, destroy what that is, and then create something else. And it's like, why can't you just, if they like bananas and apples, let them have their bananas and apples. And if you like oatmeal, well, fine, sir, have your oatmeal. Let them have their bananas and apples, because after all, the bananas and apples are doing nothing to your oatmeal. Like, what? But somehow we can't do that. And that's because one thing I find that is missing is foundational, which is respect. If
Yes.
we had that, then we wouldn't be having all this back and forth on a lot of things that I find quite stupid.
Yeah.
And because if we had the foundation of respect, then we would have boundaries, then we would have understanding of our limitations, that our rights end the minute they infringe on someone else's, right? And we would know that. It's almost like, oh, this is your home and this is the fence that separates your property from that other person's property. And but somehow we don't do that.
I think that a lot of it is ego driven. I think that the need to be right surpasses the need to exist, right? So
So
I think
interesting.
I think that people just need so much for their way to be right, that is more to them. That's more their journey, that their way is right than really living harmoniously and coexisting. And there are always going to be people like that, and that's part of live and let live. If you want to argue your point, go over there, because I don't have time. But I'm then stay where you are, because I don't have time for that over here on my side of the street. So it's learning about how to um, live in a world where all those different situations happen, and this is happening all over the world, right? So there are lots of things going on right now, people fighting for their rights for this, people fighting for their rights for that. And whether or not I agree with what they're fighting for, I do agree with their right to have their rights, right?
Of
But
course,
but
absolutely.
but just like I agree they should have their rights, I believe that my rights should be respected, because if I respect that you have rights for your beliefs, then you should honor that I have my
E-
beliefs and my rights. And
Exactly. But
I
that
think
doesn't happen.
no, I
That's
think
not
that's where
happening.
the division, it does. I think that more people are open to it. I mean, if you look at what's going on with women, like people are surprised that women are in business and they're doing so well. And I'm like, what's the surprise? We've been running the world forever, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much, because behind every good man is a great woman, right? So,
Mhm.
so I mean, we come a long way, but there's still that, and a lot of that is based on those insecurities I was just talking about with the unmet needs. Because if your
Mhm.
needs are met, right? So, I mean, when we look at the great psychologists of all times, Piaget, and Freud and all those people, they talk about different stages of development and needs that are acquired or met at those different stages. And
Mhm.
many people go through their life and they haven't had, this stage met, that love and belonging.
Mhm.
So the next stage of that development is not going to be as superior as someone who
Mhm,
had that love and belonging. It not superior is not the right word, but a person that didn't have their needs met are going to interact with others differently than someone who did. So
mhm,
that's what I mean by the unmet needs and how that plays into all that. And this is the generation we continue to build for at least 50 years now. And you have more people that addiction has never been more prevalent. Suicide has never been more prevalent,
mhm,
right? Crime is up everywhere because people feel like if you're not going to give this to me, I'm going to take it now, right?
mhm,
So, and we're seeing all these things because of that unrest,
mhm,
those unmet needs.
mhm,
This is my belief, right?
mhm,
You know, because people feel like they are being violated, that they are being
mhm,
disrespected, that they have to fight twice as hard for everybody else.
mhm,
The addiction is coming from the need to have more because they weren't filled. So when
mhm,
you look at someone, let's take weight loss, right? When you look at people that are emotional eaters, they're people that don't feel full in other areas of their life. So they try to meet that need with food, right? So it's the same with any area of your life. You're just substituting where you're not where you don't feel whole, you don't feel full or satisfied with something else, right? A
mhm,
different distraction. So addiction is very big in these people, right? And if you were in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous, any of those groups that practice 12 step and principles, the predominant story in those rooms is they didn't feel valued. They had unmet needs. They
mhm,
didn't feel, and um like they weren't enough. 9 out of 10 of them will tell you that they didn't feel like they were enough, right? And they're
mhm,
stuck in that childhood stage of development because they've been drinking from or drugging from there to where they are now, you
mhm.
know? So those are just my things. But I think we've chewed your ear off enough for tonight. Any closing words? Any closing words, Miss Lorilet?
Yeah, I think that, one of the key things that we can do is to look inside ourselves. And as we reflect on who we are, who we were before, and who we are becoming, we can potentially come up with this idea that inside of us, there's a higher self that really roots for us, that really wants the best for us, that really wants to see us succeed, and that really is there watching us, even when we are down and saying, I'm right here, I'm waiting for you to get up. Do you not see me? And where we tap into that person of the inner higher self is when we stop and we say, what do I need? What is it that I need? And when we take that quiet time and we don't look outside, we could even close our eyes and look really within and answer the question, what do I need? What would make me whole? And how can I get it? And I think it will really help.
I think that's an excellent way to end this show. So you've heard it here on Soul's Code. I'm Andra Annette, and this is Lorilet Monegro. Have a great night, guys.
Ciao, everyone.